I think there's a very specific kind of person who has a really hard time becoming an artist. And it's not because you aren't creative, it's because you've gotten really, really good at being good. One moment, please. There's like fighter jets flying over the city. You're good at school. You perform really well at work. You're the responsible one in your family. You're so organized. You have everything together. You even have it down to the fact of knowing and anticipating what other people need. You know how to prepare really well. And overall, you just know how to make things happen, right? You get the job done and you get it done well. And most importantly to you, you know how to get the results. And those are really useful skills. Like we all need that in our lives. And you could be this person. But those really useful skills start getting in the way when you start trying to make something that doesn't have a guaranteed result, until the very thing you want to materialize doesn't have a clear end goal. I think every high performer runs into this really tricky question. What happens when the skill that made you so successful is the very thing that's blocking you or preventing you from being able to create? Because as high performers, we want to know, like, what results is this going to get me? What is this going to do for me? How can I make it better? How can I be the best at this thing? Artists, on the other hand, literally just ask, what happens if I just make this? Period. And if I'm honest with you, probably going to be a little bit too honest, this struggle has shown up so much in my life lately in ways that it's honestly caused me to crash out. I'm not gonna lie to you, to crash the hell out, because it shows up in my relationships, it shows up in my creativity, it shows up just like this. You name it, this frustration of just saying to myself, what happens if I just go ahead and make it without having a clear picture of the end goal or the result? Do you want to be in it? But I don't think the problem is that I'm lacking creativity or that you honestly are lacking creativity, because there's an abundance of it. I think I'm struggling very hard with what happens when creativity essentially asks me to loosen my death grip on it, to let it flow, to let it be, instead of it fitting squarely into one of these boxes or areas in my life that I feel like I need to be so good at. And let me tell you, that's a very uncomfortable place to be, and that's a very uncomfortable question to ask yourself when you've built your entire life around being capable. Maybe a little bit too capable. So this M.A.C edit in particular is for the artist stuck in a high performer's body. Can harmony be manufactured? One of the things that got me particularly wound up about this, okay, I get very passionate about these things that we talk about on the M.A.C edit. One of these things that got me extremely passionate is, can harmony be manufactured? Unbeknownst to me, last weekend I was going to have one of the most impressionable experiences around this whole concept that I didn't even know that I needed. Like, I was surprised with these tickets to go see Every Brilliant Thing starring Tracee Ellis Ross maybe a couple of days before the show, and it was her final closing show on Broadway. This is her first time on Broadway, and I'm not even going to go into the whole details of what the actual Broadway play was about, but what struck me wasn't even just the story, because obviously that definitely stuck with me, but it was the fact that I was watching something that could never be replaced. It can never happen twice, even though the story is the same. The script is the same, the actor is the same through some runs of the show, even though the actors can change, but something about Broadway, and I'm not even a huge thespian, if you will. I go to see a couple Broadway shows here, there, boops to the bop. If you've had the privilege to do so, you completely understand this, that Broadway is this very much a capture of a moment in time. It is such a reflection of artistry, I think, that the world is getting away from, and I think we need to bring it back. I think we need to, run it back just a little bit, because play could be running on Broadway for years and years and years, and every night it is performed differently because the energy isn't the same, the timing isn't the same. These are all different variables that you can only capture in that one moment. So something inevitably changes night over night, show over show. Someone can laugh a little longer during a scene. Someone can have a different reaction. Hell, maybe something even slightly goes wrong with the set, or something goes wrong with the acting. Maybe you forget a word, but that's not necessarily a failure of a performance. That is the performance. And because something I think so special about Broadway, it's not trying to manufacture this one perfect performance, because again, you have to perform this night over night over night. It's every night getting the right combinations of factors in harmony, but they're not all perfect.
Decided to do a Broadway debut with the Tony-nominated one-person play. I don't know what I was thinking. It felt like like swallowing a whale. But then it just became home. And I am so grateful for this experience, but more than that, this play and the ability to do this every show with people, to just be in connection with each other.
It's asking you to be extremely present with this particular version of what you're seeing, with this particular expression of artistry. And that is really hard for someone who's high performing, because I want it to be the same every single time. I want it to be perfect every single time. I want to get it right. And even just when I think about, it's about to be the fall, sports are coming up. Some of my favorite sports are about to be back in session. Okay, baby. But you hear all this chatter all the time, like on sports networks, and they're talking about ring chasing, super teams, getting the perfect starting lineup, if you will. But the best teams really have the best chemistry. It doesn't necessarily mean they have the most, talent across their entire roster. So that's why LeBron can move around to, whatever type of team he want to move to. It's still Knicks in 5. And then let's bring it back. Let's bring it back in. I started thinking about film. I know in a previous Mac Edit we talked about TV versus film, but now let's talk about Broadway versus film, because I think they tell two completely different stories as well. Because film can almost do the opposite of what Broadway can do. You shoot the same scene 20 million times, to be honest with you. I don't know how many times they shoot it over and over and over again. Maybe sometimes it's on the first cut, who knows? But at the end of the day, in a film, you can change the pacing, the music, edit out mistakes. You can make the scene what you need it to be out of the millions of cuts that you've taken to get the scene. And eventually you create this very specific reality that is how you want it to be played out. And that's more like, what us high performers we tend to strive for, is this very specific scene that we want it to play out, a very controlled version of the reality. I'm stepping on my own toes here. I'm stepping on my own toes. But I'm not going to sit here and say that neither medium is better than the other. Obviously, they're both forms of artistic expression that have a huge role in our society, in our influence, in everything, okay? But they're teaching us a completely different lesson when it comes to perfection, or I would say the illusion of perfectionism. The magic, the little sprinkly fairy dust that goes across Broadway, you know what I mean? It's not in the fact that they get it right every single night the same way every single time. The magic is that they don't. When you go to the show, every time is going to be a little bit different. It's going to have a little bit more nuance, history, and context. It's going to have some more meaning and character than some of the other nights. And I think that's something that I've forgotten and I need to introduce back into my life desperately. And I'm sure more of us do, especially on the internet, especially when you deal with internet age and internet culture, is that not everything has to be the same formula, the same template, the same, sauce in order for it to be artistry, in order for it to be content, in order for it to be expression. It doesn't have to be perfect. I know that I need to hear that, so I'm sure somebody did too. It doesn't have to always look like obsessively fixing over things. However, it can sneak up, it can creep up, it can creep. It could freak its way into your life, and you haven't even realized that you've started to have those perfectionist high performer tendencies. Like, oh, I'm just gonna wait until I'm ready. And you end up waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Oh, I'm just going to research a little more. I'm going to find out. I'm going to get a little more information. And then you just end up hoarding information and news articles and saving TikToks and saving Instagram carousels and, watching a million how-to YouTube videos. And yet you haven't produced anything. And sometimes, again, speaking to myself, I'm calling myself to the carpet. It can look like wanting to know the final product before you even start. And sometimes it could be very innocent as buying all the supplies to start that hobby you said you were going to start. You pick it up once or twice, and then you never return back to it. Enter the chat. This little bag that I picked up out of my closet just the other day. You're wondering what's in here. It is a beautiful watercolor paper pad and this lovely travel watercolor set. And I picked this up months and months ago when I was at this very cute cafe and they had this little art supply section in the back. And I was like, that would be so lovely to just have a nice hobby that's very much offline, very much, you need both hands. You can't be clocked in on what other people are doing when you're just watercoloring, enjoying, I was like, yes, this is the perfect outlet, especially because when I was younger, I used to love stuff like this. I used to love painting. I used to love watercolor. Point being, I bought all these supplies and I think I watercolored once, literally one time. And then the rest of this lovely booklet is literally empty. And I titled this one called Fruits of Labor. I think that's funny because because apparently, during that time I wanted to become someone who watercolors. But then once I started, doing the watercoloring, I realized, oh, I want to be really good at watercolor. And those are two very different desires, because one goes into it saying, I want to enjoy this, I want to practice this, I want to have this creative expression. And then another goes into it with this level of obsessiveness, mastery, and just, controlling perfectionism, where you don't even get to have the same enjoyment, free banter, and just expression that you would if I was just dilly-dallying and, just having a good time, smoking my imaginary cigarette and doing my watercolor. Because the high performer in me asks, can I be good at this? But then the artist who genuinely need to sit down and just free flow and to have this type of creative expression was simply trying to ask me, do I want to keep doing this? Is this something I desire? Is this something that's feeding my soul, my creativity, my spirit? So maybe harmony can't be manufactured. You can't always put together your super team. You can't always have your life be treated like a film. Maybe it's more like Broadway. Maybe every time you do it, it's just a little bit different, and that's okay. It doesn't have a complete end goal that looks like a very clear picture. And I found that, of course, in true fashion, some of the most beautiful things in our lives have the most variation. They aren't as precise. They can just breathe. They can move. They can shake. They can breathe, stretch, shake, let it go. And then, of course, there's another problem, and hopefully you have the answer to the problem. But then we get into the problem of having the audience in our head. Because even if we get past the perfectionism, we're doing it together, we're working through it, we're like, okay, maybe things don't have to be as clean, cut, dry, polished, and controlled as I thought they did. What about your fear of being perceived doing the thing, quote unquote, unwell or just unpolished, not to your best ability? You still have to contend with the applause, the POV, the criticism of other people. And are you okay with that? Have you made peace with that side of artistry? And I think in true, 2026, almost damn near 2027 fashion, creating publicly is something that has become obviously so readily available. Because at some point, eventually, even just here, like on YouTube, for example, I'm not just making it for myself, I'm making it for the person who's also viewing it. You also start to make your art for the people who are, again, giving you applause or giving you critiques, or even just the point of view or perception of how they are going to receive your art or the thing that you're putting out there in the world. Because you get in your head and you start imagining, like closing your eyes, for example, and this little voice in your head, or these little nagging voices sometimes, of who is actually the person on the other side of your art that's going to receive it and perceive it. What are they going to think? Are they going to like it? Is this something that they're going to understand? What do they expect from me? Is this going to perform well? Is this going to do numbers? Is this going to go viral? Am I going to sell a lot of units of something? What will people think of me because of the art that I put out there? How are they going to perceive what I'm trying to say? And suddenly it's like boom, boom, boom. The audience doesn't even have to be in the room with you, because they're in your head. I'm in your head. I'm in your head.
But the Knicks are still upset that they did not upgrade Victor Wembanyama's foul that was not called in game one when he hit the back of the head of Jalen Brunson.
And then before you know it, the audience literally doesn't even have to be in the room to change the way that you create. In the same room that you are, putting together your outfits, in the same room that you're doing your makeup, in the same room that you're doing your watercolor, your journaling, your scrapbooking, your, basket weaving. Hell, I don't know, whatever your artistry is, you now have an audience in the back of your head, changing the way that you're even creating the thing in the first place. You have no idea every week the mental, physical, and all of the struggle that I go through, of course, to get these Mac edits out for you. Not even just from a time and strategic kind of standpoint, but literally just writing them and putting the effort and knowledge into them, or even my point of view into them, because I'm like, is someone going to understand this? Does this even make sense? Like, what's going on? Are they going to like this? Do I need to talk about this topic? Do I not need to talk about this? How do I, bring the nuance, the history, and the context without also being so... It's just so many things that go into it. And I write it all up and I toss it all out because I'm like, nah, that ain't it, boss. But it's because I've gotten so in my head about who on the other side of the screen, you, my loves. And of course, I want to deliver the best, baddest, most enjoyable experience in the magic for you all. However, that dilutes and takes away from the magic within myself, the creativity, the love, the joy, the knowledge, my point of view that brought the magic in the first place. Which reminds me and really knocked me off my feet when I saw this conversation. Two amazing and such influential writers, speakers, just overall activists in our society between James Baldwin and Maya Angelou.
It is not possible. It is not possible for an artist to be a success. No.
Then would you say that again?
I said it is not possible for an artist to be a success.
Thank you.
Once you think of yourself as a success,
You finish.
you forget it.
Finito.
Forget
Because
it.
you know what I find is that you begin to believe your own publicity.
You begin
That's
to take your
one.
identity from other
From something
people.
else, and you stop experimenting because somebody says, well, when you did so-and-so, that was such a success. Why don't you do that again?
Look, when I wrote
If you've been around the Mac Edit for any stretch of time, you know I've probably mentioned Maya Angelou at least once, twice, if not a million times. Between books, writing, speeches, and things, but this conversation, it was a genuine conversation between her and James Baldwin, who ended up being friends, mentors to one another, you know, all of it. James Baldwin talks about success almost like a runaway horse, like someone got away from the carriage. One of these carriages that are in New York City, the horse just ran away and boom, it was gone, which unfortunately just happened recently. So sad to see that. But let's stay focused. Once success starts to become a part of the equation, it becomes very much a part of the formula of how you create. Instead of it being a byproduct of the creation, it becomes a part of the creation. You start creating with success in mind rather than, again, allowing success to attract to the very thing that you're creating. You're forcing it. You're manufacturing it. And that is always felt, especially by the viewer, especially by the person who's receiving the art. You can see this pushback, especially in digital creation, because people are tired of what feels like cookie cutter, very 1-2 step formulaic content. However, it also does contrast what the algorithm rewards. But we also have to remember the algorithm is not people. It can only receive and perceive the way that it's programmed to do so. We as people have so many experiences, beliefs, background, understanding, nuance, history, and context that bring the meaning and character to how we receive, perceive, and also create art. So yes, there's a place for success and templates and metrics and ways to hit those goals. However, sometimes when it comes to art, you have to remove that in the creation process. And Maya Angelou definitely hits on this piece specifically because she talks about believing in your own publicity. That idea really scares me. It really, spooks me out because I don't want to become so good at understanding the noise and understanding the audience and just reading into the metrics, the views, the watch time, or the sales, the this, the that I actually lose touch with the, no pun intended, meaning and character behind why we love, share, and buy products. I don't want to accidentally become an audience member in my own head. You should never start watching yourself make things because that's different than you just genuinely making them. You already know the deal as someone who loves all things beauty, wellness, thrift, and vintage fashion, but most importantly, culturally rich experiences. I was craving a waffle ice cream cone in the middle of the summer type of craving, something that felt like the cross between a Substack article and a traditional YouTube video. So I created it. Welcome back to the Mac Edit. My name is Nia Mac. And in true fashion, that's why it's got me thinking about music. This whole thing gets me to thinking about music because music is such a good reminder that precision isn't the same thing as feeling. There's a couple of music theory concepts that just speak to the moment. You know what I mean? Timbre, the texture and color of sound. Even reminds me of this album by Alabama Shakes called Sound and Color. And everything about the depth, the gravitas, the feeling of that album literally reminds you of the word texture. But it's this idea that two people, multiple instruments can play the exact same note, can make the exact same sound, but it can feel completely different based on who's playing it. And then of course there's dynamics. Loud, quiet, tension, release. Loud, quiet, tension, release. And even micro timing. Those tiny, small deviations in music that can give it its pace, that can give it a very different feeling. It can give it a groove, you know what I'm saying? It can give it a vibe. It can give it a vibe. And I absolutely love that. I love music. I love music. I just love the way it makes me feel. Music is funny because you can technically measure music. It has a very measurable, palatable, calculated formula to it. But the things we feel when we listen to music are not measurable. It just goes to show that even in music, in art, there is a formula to it. However, everyone perceives it and receives it very differently. What we experience when we listen to music isn't always the result of perfect, exact precision in the way that it was executed. That feeling in and of itself is art. Like what you feel when you're listening to art is art. Enter the chat, Tyler the Creator and Frank Ocean. Okay, you see these vinyls? You see this CD? We mean business around here, okay? Odd Future Wolfgang, period. You had to be there. If you know, you know. If you don't know, now you know. I've been thinking about Tyler the Creator and Frank Ocean in the same way, but for different reasons. Both of them have such different relationships with perception. Okay, like follow me. If you think about Tyler the Creator, right? It's a part of his music. It's a part of his identity. It's a part of his brand, if you will, to lean into different perceptions of him. Every album is a little bit different characters, a little bit of a different genre sometimes. Like this album is his rap album, but he has other albums that lean more punk, that lean more rap, that lean more pop, that lean more dark mystical rap rather than like conscious rap. And Tyler is known for having different personas, different eras. He generates these complete different worlds around his music, around what he's trying to convey and what he's trying to have perceived. He almost turns the perception itself into a form of art. Love that. Love that about him. I feel like a lot of artists and a lot of generations can actually learn from Tyler the Creator. And I know he can be like controversial in some ways because obviously his music's not for everybody, but that's the whole point, is that his artistry isn't for everybody. But I think what he does with his, world shaping and worldview, if you will, around perception is a really beautiful take on artistry. In the other hand, one of my absolute favorite artists ever, like look at this album, first of all. Like, look at this vinyl. This is the red copy. Frank has had a much more difficult and different path when it comes to perception. I want someone to go to Japan, wherever Frank Ocean is held up, go find him and pull him out, yeet his ass out of retirement and drop us an album. That would literally make my entire decade, if you will, okay? I have missed Frank Ocean since forever. For the last 12 to 15 years, I've missed Frank Ocean dearly. I was a Frank Ocean fan, let me tell you, before he even dropped Channel Orange. I'm talking about like Strawberry Swing Days. Like, I just love Frank Ocean so much, so stay with me. Frank has disappeared because of his relationship with perception. He takes a more scarcity approach. He obviously has created more distance with the world's perception of him and of his artistry. And he has obviously a very much refusal to participate in the mechanisms, the infrastructure, and the overall like machine, if you will. He doesn't want to be in the rat race when it comes to music labels, the music business, and overall has separated himself as an artist from the industry that is art. And I don't think one is better than the other. While I do wish, hope, and pray daily that Frank Ocean returns and of course like deals with obviously the mental struggles. And however, Frank, if you're watching this, Frank's team, if you're watching this, we would love some music, okay? We would love some music. We've been bumping Nostalgia Ultra. We've been bumping the singles. We've been bumping Channel Orange for so long, and we just want something else. But I think between Tyler the Creator and between Frank Ocean, the two different styles of perception, that's actually the point. That is actually the whole entire point. Problem isn't being perceived. It's creating for the exclusivity of perception. Because you can't let people see you without letting their perception become the same thing as steering you. Because, of course, the internet will not let us know peace. The girls on the internet will not let us know peace, okay? There's always some drama. There's always some tea. There's always some bull, okay, going on the internet.
How you doing?
And because I'm chronically online, you're chronically online, bestie, and you're like, yeah, I have a job. So do I, but somehow I still know these things, but I'm here to report them to you and sum it up in a way, we'll just cut through the bull and I'll just serve it to you straight, right? In this week's episode of the drama, the tea that's going on the internet, that comes back to this whole thing. We have the wedding dress drama. So there's this huge influencer. Her name is Bridget, aka Acquired Style. Actually, it's more like Acquired Style, aka Bridget. So if you don't even know who that is, that makes me know, never mind. It doesn't even matter. The point of the matter is Acquired Style got married, I think, this past weekend. Like it, love it, I love, you know what I'm saying? Get your thing on, get your groove on, get your swerve on. But of course, in true online culture fashion, the girlies just can't let a girl have a wedding weekend, have her moment, let it shine without there being some drama. There was another, let's say, reality TV, I guess, star or star adjacent. Her name is Brielle Bierman, I believe is her name. And she is Kim Zolciak's daughter. And if you are, in Bravo Nation or you're just into reality TV, Kim Zolciak was on the old seasons, the OG season, some of the best seasons, if you ask me, of Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Lord have mercy. Kim thinks she is a real pop star. Okay. Really, Kim.
She's her daughter. Right. Follow me. So acquired style wore this Vera Wang wedding dress that she customized based on one of Vera Wang's, original dresses and pieces. Brielle took it upon herself to post on her Instagram story and kind of shaded basically acquired style and posted her trying on the same or similar dress in the Vera Wang store and was like, oh, this is like the dress that I almost went with, but I didn't. Okay, all shade, all tea, hot tea, no palm trees. Like, that is Shady Bear. On the same, wedding weekend, couple of days, that obviously acquired style is, going around the internet. People are, oh my God, look at the dress, the wedding, boop, 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 boop. Catty, messy high school drama. Because basically she was trying to say, you went with a dress that, I liked it, didn't love it. It's not even that. It's not even really that great, right? That's how you could perceive it. But at the end of the day, one woman wears a dress, another woman could wear the same dress, and suddenly we're debating over who wore it better, who owns the moment, who owns the dress, whose dress is it, the whole thing of it. But this doesn't even just apply to obviously these two let's say internet famous or famous people. This applies to any who's gotten married wearing a wedding dress or even just regular other outfits. One person can have the same article of clothing and wear it 50,000 million different ways, especially compared to another person. And it's all a reflection of how they choose to express that article of clothing, their wedding dress, whatever it is. But it doesn't have to be a slight, a knock, or a shade on what someone else does with that same article of clothing. So I'm sitting here thinking, wait, this one wedding dress can be worn by multiple people. Like my wedding dress, for example, that was me. I knew when I saw it, when I knew it, when I described my wedding dress in my head, that was it. And I was never really a person who grew up fantasizing, romanticizing over weddings, marriage, all the things. We've talked about this on the Mac Edit before. But I knew that I wanted a dress that screamed Nia. Yes, that is her. When I look at that dress, it is her, it is me. But that doesn't mean someone else can't also wear that dress and be like, oh, that's Jennifer. Okay, that's Jennifer's dress, period. But I'm thinking to myself, wait, at the end of the day, the day's got to end. But at the end of the day, art doesn't belong to just the person who made it. Once you release something into the world, you don't get to completely control what people do with it. And that itself is scary. The leap that you're taking to be able to do that is scary. So not only preparing yourself for that kind of leap, if you will, but releasing that control, releasing that perfectionism, releasing that perception that once you release your art, everyone is going to perceive it differently and they may do something different with it. They may take the dress, make little tweaks and stuff here and there, and that's their vision of your dress. But you can't hold on so tightly to the art itself that you don't allow it to breathe, stretch, shake, let it go once it's released out into the world. Because the way you created it is not the way people are going to always see it. Matter of fact, that's probably not how they're going to see it. And I think that's another thing, especially me and you probably watching this far, as high performers struggle with it real bad, because you're very used to being responsible for the outcomes. Art requires a certain amount, a lot of amount of surrender. And this is where you have to take it a step further for yourself. So you're like, okay, Nia, cool. We just talked about the perfectionism. We just talked about the perception, but how am I going to let myself breathe, stretch, shake, let it go? How am I going to let myself, eat, pray, love, and mind my business, to allow the art, to allow the creativity, to allow the peace, love, and joy to flow through me? Okay, cool. Let's talk about it. Let's practice it together. Get out of your head. You see this big thing that I have? Get out of your head. I'm still learning this the most. but I have to practice it. And I feel like we're going to have to practice it together, because if I'm being honest, again, probably a little too honest with you here on the internet, this is why I pay a therapist. I've spent a lot of my time having to think my way through things. And sometimes you can get really good at thinking, get really good at putting together the Mac edit, but sometimes you have to live it. Sometimes you have to go out there and practice it. And I have to practice what I'm preaching, especially after you've lived through some things, you've been through some things, and life has really whooped your ass. You can start thinking about the problem before it happened. You can start thinking about the solution while the problem is happening. You can understand it. You can research. You can plan it. You can be an Aries, Virgo, ABC 1, 2, 3, Jesus Christ rising, and you can blame all different sides of your personality traits on those things. However, those things cannot help you escape from the fact that you still need to go out and practice. You need to get out of your head and you need to do it. You need to find the right framework and you need to execute it. Period. Full stop. Execution has to become the normal. It has to become part of the equation. Because ask yourself, what happens if you can't think your way into being an artist? So sorry to tell you, but you can't. You can't just sit here and think all day and all night about being an artist without any art. Insert your form of artistry here, okay? If you want to be a clothing designer, how are you going to be a clothing designer without any clothes? If you want to design jewelry, how are you going to be a jewelry designer without any jewelry? If you want to be an interior designer, how are you going to, design the interiors without designing the interiors? Insert your form of artistry here. How are you going to do it without executing on that idea? I said to myself, I'm sitting here watching and consuming so much motherfucking YouTube, and I'm like, yo, I would rock at that. I would knock it out the park. But how am I going to sit here and be a YouTuber with no channel? It's crazy. It's crazy the things that we will box ourselves into, or I should say box ourselves out of, because we don't execute on the art, because we're in our head. So what happens when you feel your way there? What happens when you get out of your head, get into your body, get into those somatic feelings of feeling your way into some art? And I know that is hard. Trust me, I know that's hard. Even though I do tend to wear my heart on my sleeve, sometimes it's a little bit more protected than I like to think it is. And if I'm being, again, overly honest in this moment, this has, like I said, shown up for me so much in relationships, for example. I've gotten really, really good at being a really good friend. I've gotten less good at allowing people to be a good friend to me, about opening up and allowing those things, to happen for me as well. You can get really good at executing high performing, but sometimes you turn them into processes rather than actually feeling it, going through it, and allowing it to flow. I can analyze something for 6 hours, but then I have a knot in my neck after that. I can explain what I'm feeling before I've actually felt it. And that's crazy. Visualize, if you will, the art that I want to produce, but I haven't actually taken the steps to produce it. And I think as for me, and maybe for you, I'm just suggesting, don't shoot the messenger. I think getting out of a high performer's body means getting out of your head. Not forever, because like I said, these are all wonderful, amazing skills that you've learned to protect yourself, to get yourself out of situations that have been maybe generationally passed you, and you're like, I'm never going to do that again. And you've become this high performer. You've become really well educated. You got that degree. Since you got your degree, you think you know everything, and boop to the bob. You have to get out of your head long enough to just notice that you're actually here, that you are actually here. The artist is right there in front of you. Notice your breathing, notice the tension, notice what lights you up, notice what excites you, what feels good, what feels wrong. Because if you're blindly just high performing at different processes and you don't even stop to understand what they're doing to you physically, you may just be doing something blindly because you're good at it, but not actually realizing the results and the toll that it's taking on you, or it's taking on the artist that's within you. There's a childlike naivety, and there's a childlike feeling and flow that you have to have about artistry a lot of the times. What did we do before we were super good at things, before we were so hyper vigilant, before we had our personal brand, before we had our Instagram page, before we had our TikTok, before we had, our, founder, entrepreneur in our bio, before we worked at McDonald's part-time and then worked at the ice cream shop part-time and then worked as a DJ, party host part-time, and then before we did all those things and got into this really work, high performing mode, before you had to really explain your why behind everything, what did you do? Did you draw? Did you dance? Did you do your makeup just for fun? Did you write short stories, write poems in a little notebook? Did you leave post-it notes around the house with little sayings on them? Did you go in your mom's closet and play dress up? Did you rearrange your room a million times? Like, when I tell you, I was obsessed with HGTV. I just knew in my heart of hearts that I should have been an interior designer, because I used to watch HGTV, and then what I would do is take like a spiral notebook, like a blank spiral notebook, and I would get magazines, and I would cut out different pieces of furniture in magazines or different colors of things, and I would paste them onto like a flat lay drawing of, like, let's say a living room or a bedroom, and I would be like, okay, this is gonna go here, this color is gonna go on this wall, and I would make those like layouts, if you will, like I was an interior designer. Unprovoked, for nobody else's gaze but mine, just for the funs and the kicks and giggles of it. And somehow, somewhere along the way, those habits, those fun little things that you did in your own private time or with friends or with family, start to slowly die out, because you become this high performing self and you don't feel like it has value. You don't feel like it's going to pay your rent. You don't feel like it's going to pay your bills. You know, it's not going to help you eat, pray, love, and mind your business. But actually, it is. Because if you think about children, they don't need like a reason to practice things. They don't need a reason to practice being alive. They just do it. They just are. They just flow. And I love that. But maybe our adulthood has really toughened us up, if you will, that our play always has to be performance. And that's just not always the case, especially when you're trying to lean into being an artist. And this is why I wanted to pick up watercolors again. Like, oh my God, look at how precious and beautiful. This is why I wanted to pick up watercolors again. Not because I want to be like a super sick watercolorist. I mean, that'd be awesome, but that's not my goal going into it. I just want to enjoy myself. I just want to have something in my hand, create something with my hands that's not digital, or not because I want it to become content, but just to have a separate hobby that feels really good and feels like a really good outlet. And I don't have to know what the painting is going to look like. I just need to keep painting. I feel like, especially in this stage of my life, I need to have some place, and we need to have some place as high performers, I'm talking to us, where you can be not good at things. You need to have that space. Not every space that you step into, not everything your hand touches, okay? You are not the hand of God. Not everything you touch needs to be absolute perfectionism, okay? You need to have a space to be able to just do, to try, to mess up, as long as we're not hurting anybody, okay? That's the rules. To just have those things. Music can be that for yourself. To make a couple beats on your phone, on, GarageBand. Go edit some videos that nowhere have to be posted. Buy a watercolor paper book. Start a puzzle. Like, who cares how long it's going to take you to put it together? Dance in your room when nobody's watching. Just put on your favorite song and just move and groove. Don't even set up the camera. Roll down the blinds if you have to. Let practicing these things, let practicing being an artist become a sanctuary in and of itself. It's the experience of being inside the process. And I think that's why humans have gotten really good at, if we're being honest, creating rituals, creating practices that get them outside of their own mind. Like, if you think about it, throughout history, there's always been different human practices where people are trying to get out of their head, because I think, honestly, we all know being in your head very deeply and far too much can be a very scary place to be. That's why there are religions, there are spiritual practices, there are hobbies, meditation, music, community, art, dance, like all these things were created because humans are like, nah, boss, this is too much for the human brain to process, so I need to find a practice, a ritual to be able to express it, to be able to live, to breathe, to eat, pray, love, and mind my business, so that I don't have to always face my humanity, always face that control, always face that perception and perfectionism that I'm really wrestling with. For thousands of years, we've created ways to get out of our individual minds. Because at the end of the day, being trapped in your mind is not the goal. That is not the goal. That is not T. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's why we get to the end of our week sometimes, like on a Friday, and you feel like you're so burnt out because you haven't had a place where you felt like you could gently mess up, where you could just practice, you could express yourself. High performance is exhausting. Burnout has become such a huge topic because people are so high performing these days. We've gotten really good at being really, really good. Now I think it's time to take a little step back. I know I am, at admitting to ourselves, doing the hard pills to swallow and saying, I need a space to be bad. And I need also the place and the support and the people around me where I can just be bad, or I can just be all of me without having to feel like every piece needs to be all the way put together. So I want you to know, for my high performers, come to the front. I say all of this to say that you have too much meaning and character to not know that the artist is still there. The artist is still there. It's not buried. It's not gone. It's just buried under all the things that you've learned to be really good at. Under the grades, under the praise, under the criticism, under the expectations, under your career, under your degrees. Like boop, 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 boop. Go down the list. Under all those things, there's an artist in there. Promise you. I guarantee it. So under this version that I've gotten really good at maintaining, and I'm sure you've gotten really good at maintaining as well, there really is an artist with so much abundance, so much creativity, so many ideas. But maybe it's not necessarily about like, oh, you need to be more creative or you have this like writer's block. You haven't even moved the things out of the way in order for your creative expression to flow in the first place. That's why it's blocked. You don't even make time to be creative. That's why it's blocked. As a high performer, I want to know, is this good? But as an artist, I just want to know what happens. Let me see what happens, what I can produce, what's going to come out of me if I just keep going, if I just stick with it. And there's a resilience, there is a beauty, there is a journey that is so intrinsically valued to your journey that you may be missing out on if you're just always high performing at things. It's almost like you need to trade being good and high performing at a lot of things so you can be bad at something for greatness to come forward. And you never know what that thing could be. And even if greatness never materializes, the thing that could be great is just you having a great time. So really, be that person who's more so willing to take the risk, not that you have to be good at something, but that you can be bad at something. And that, I think, is the artist who really gets it right. I admire people who take that leap and say, I'm going to be bad at it. That's fine. Whatever it is, I just love it and enjoy it and express myself truly and wholeheartedly. So I love you so much. Catch you on the next Mac Edit. Bye.